Hi, Darvis White here, and welcome to SCULPT of War Gun Charities, where we teach about healthy food choices made easy. This amazing series is a partnership with of Salt and Soil Wellness Solutions and Usher's New Look Foundation. I'm here today with the founder of Salt and Soil, the emotional wellness chef, Jasmine Simone. We're here at the kitchen of Usher's New Look Foundation. So let's get cooking.
Let's get cooking.
So it's the holidays.
Yep.
And there's a lot of people around, there's a lot of kids, there's a lot of family members around. What is a quick, cost-effective way to try and get some of my other family members involved in the meal preparation process?
Well, one of the things I would say is divide up the task, right? So like if you're making greens, that's usually traditionally like one or two people. I don't know about your family, but in my family, there's a few people that just like make the greens to, perfection. Right? And then we want to like think about, you say quick, cost effective, and healthy, right? So how do we rethink these greens to make them really taste good and healthy? So to answer your question, I would get there's multiple steps to every dish. Mm-hmm. There's a step where we're in our greens that we're going to make today, we're going to use mushrooms. Nice. So I'm going to show you how to make your greens completely flavorful. Okay. And at a fraction of the cost. Wow. Right? Because a lot of times people put in their greens, like a lot of maybe meat
or like fatback.
Mm-hmm. You can save that, and you could also, benefit your health at the same time.
Right.
In an earlier vlog we talked about building your own broth, right? So we know by now that we're not discarding these mushroom stems. We're keeping these to put in a container so that we can build our own broth for later. Yeah. So this is the broth that we made before. It's the same kind of broth. I'm just gonna take these mushroom stems and house them in a bag. Later I'm gonna put those in the freezer. Okay, so let's get started. And the other kind of mushrooms, so you could use a variety of mushrooms for your greens. These are the trumpet mushrooms. They have like a meatier texture to it. They are very firm and hearty, right? So we're going to cut these up, and we're gonna basically saute these in a pan with the rest of the mushrooms, okay? So these are the holiday greens now. You go to your family's house talking about you're making greens, you can't mess up.
Right. It has to be right.
Greens
is like a big staple.
Yeah.
How you're green. So so this has to be good, but it's looking good.
Mm-hmm. So we got the mushrooms happening over here. We got some mushrooms. Now, another way to make your dollar stretch is to mix your greens together. So right here I have some mushrooms, different kinds of mushrooms. I have some shiitake and some trumpet mushrooms. And I'm just gonna go ahead and put those in a bowl because later we're gonna saute that in a pan. Okay?
So Jasmine, tell me about some of the health aspects of eating greens. It's a really big part of eating healthy. We all know that eating vegetables is important and getting that within your diet is important.
It is.
But tell us specifically about greens in particular.
Well, I mean, really, here's the thing, right? So, I'm glad you asked about the greens because a lot of times people will eat greens, which are so good for your body, right? I mean, all the way around. And then we'll just add the most unhealthiest things to the greens.
Right.
And, it's like, well, at least I'm eating greens. Yes. But we're still getting a lot of the saturated fats, which is impacting cholesterol and, these things still. So what I'm doing right now, again, I'm saving these scraps and I'm gonna build another broth. Nice. See how easy this is? When I'm cooking? Yeah, instead of just throwing this in the compost, which I would normally do, I would just save this, right? So I'm also gonna have some peppers in here. These peppers came from Truly Living Well Farm.
Shout out to Truly Living Well.
Yay, thank you for this. And these delicious greens over here are a mixture from the farm and from Seven Under Natural Foods Market.
Yes, shout out to Seven Under as well.
So that's the thing about the greens. They're called greens, and they're typically a way that you can kind of make it stretch is you can cook multiple greens together. So we got some collards, we got some rainbow chard, and we're gonna go into that too, right? A lot of times people discard the stems off their greens. You can even use that for the broth, or you wanna cook those down. A lot of the nutrients is housed in the stem, right? So we wanna cook this down.
So you wanna make sure you get the stems to get all the nutrients that you have.
And it's gonna cook down so good. It's just gonna cook right down. We're gonna get all these stems off. Some of these you can save for broth. Some of these you can, you know, use for cooking.
So Jasmine, tell us about some of the other greens. We have rainbow chard,
Swiss chard. We're gonna throw some spinach in these greens. We got some collards. We got some spinach. We got some sweet potato greens. Anything that you want to put in your greens that are green, you can put them in there. See, look how pretty this is.
Yeah.
So good.
You guys can see that. Yeah.
It's gorgeous. I love this color, right? So we're gonna keep that kind of right there. We're gonna put that down first in the pan with the onions.
Now, can you mix in kale with this as well, or is
can.
it? Or what do you?
You can. I traditionally don't. I mean, but you can. I have done that before. Yes. To answer your question, you absolutely could mix.
But it has a
together.
different flavor.
It does.
Correct?
It has a little bit of different flavor to it. I do prefer my kale raw, but that's just. It doesn't have to be raw though. It's not.
Cooked
You know,
a little
yeah,
different.
it's totally fine. So I'm just rough chopping some onions.
Okay.
Got a little rough chop happening.
Nice.
And on my pan, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and use coconut oil for this recipe. So once again, thank you for 7 Next. We got some delicious coconut oil, and that's what we're gonna use instead of the traditional, you know,
lard or fat.
anything, right? Yeah, we're just gonna.
And a quick reminder, like we're giving you guys healthier options. There are some things that you may use, but these are some healthier options that you can use to try.
Right. Yeah. And if you're still using those other oils that Jarvis just mentioned, go ahead and use them, phase them out, and next time try something else. That's what I like to do. Okay. So we're gonna go ahead and get cooking on the greens. We're also gonna throw in some. I like to chop up everything I need for my greens at the same time. We're gonna. So far in our greens, we have onions. We have the roots of some beautiful rainbow chard. We have some tomatoes, mushrooms, and we can even put some garlic in here, of course.
Yeah, that's great.
One of my favorite seasonings. I love sun-dried tomatoes.
And this is what makes holiday greens, right? Like it's not just greens, but there are other things in there that kind of, you know,
it's kind of like our family, right?
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
like
exactly.
all these little different pieces make it come together, right?
Yeah.
Some more colorful than others. All right, so let's go into the stove, and then while we're cooking down our onions and our peppers and mushrooms, I'm going to show you how to cut the greens to maximize the flavor.
Nice.
Okay.
All right. Great.
All right. Now we're going to throw in some onions. Now that the oil is hot, throw in some onions and some garlic. And then we're going to throw in the roots of our rainbow greens. Just the roots. Alright. And as that cooks down, we're going to throw in some mushrooms. All of this is going to flavor the greens, y'all. You understand what I'm saying? This is the whole process over here. Not just like, and as this cooks down, we're going to go back and cut up the greens, which I normally do everything ahead of time, but I want to give this time to really get good and simmer down. How does that look? This is delicious. Like you can just eat this in itself. Alright, so as it cooks down, we're going to go and cut up the greens. So the key to cooking greens is, one, you want to lay them all flat, like money, right? Lay it all flat, like, and then, or as flat as possible. And then you want to tightly roll them up, kind of like a burrito.
Okay.
And the smaller you cut the greens, the more flavor they hold.
Really? Okay.
Yep.
So not really
Those
big
big rough chop
Right. Okay.
cut greens, they tend to hold less flavor and be less flavorful. So a lot of times people use the meat and stuff to give the greens flavor. This is one way that you could avoid that.
Just cut them
Right?
smaller.
Just cut the
and then
greens
the other way.
finer.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah.
And we're just gonna rough chop those, but really small, right? Like a fine, good rough chop. All right. Greens in the pan. Let's go over here. They're ready to go in. Check back on one of our earlier vlogs. We showed you how to build your own broth at no expense. Using the items you have, we're gonna add that into our greens. And then we're gonna toss our greens in here and let them slow cook with some seasonings, of course. So then I'm gonna come season this with a little bit of liquid amino, nutritional yeast, some sea salt, and of course we got all the flavors from the bottom, which I'm going to now stir over to the top. This is obviously a little pan of greens. If you're from my family, this is a little pan of greens. But you can also make this exact same recipe in a big pot. So you want to let that cook down. Now, here's another tip for cooking greens that most people don't know. I didn't do it today, but I'm going to give you my holiday tip for greens, okay? Marinate the greens overnight before you cook them. You can marinate them in a mushroom broth before you cook them. It will make them so tender. I mean, like, the most tender. Now, what else I'm going to put in here is I have some I went to the farmer's market and I got some of this I Got You Foods salsa. I'm truly living well. And I'm just gonna put a dab of that. What? Salsa in the greens? But you have to think about it. Everything in the salsa is already in our greens. It's got tomatoes and onions and bell peppers, and it's gonna give our greens a little kick. Okay? It's gonna give our greens a little kick. I'm talking about using everything you need. And then we're gonna let these cook down. And we're gonna season them again with some sea salt. And we got mushrooms in there. We got a little bit of liquid aminos. And we're gonna put a little nutritional yeast on the greens. And nutritional yeast is basically just inactive yeast that doesn't rise, but it gives it a nice kind of nutty flavor to the greens. Let those cook down. You can cook this with or without a top. Gosh, delicious. The greens are still green. That's what you want. Alright, I'm gonna throw in some nutritional yeast. I have my broth in there. So we're gonna top it off with some nutritional yeast. And again, this is an inactive yeast that gives it a really, really, really good flavor on the greens. And then, for those people who like to kind of do like a little smoky taste of the greens, maybe you put some smoked ham or something like that in your greens, I'm gonna use liquid smoke. And it's just a dab of liquid smoke in the greens. It's gonna give it that same smoky flavor, and you don't have to worry about your health. Imagine that, sitting at your Thanksgiving table with your family and not worrying about your health. Just knowing that what you're eating is good and good for you. That's it. The greens are done. You can just let them simmer down. That's it. Delicious. So good. It's so good and flavorful. It's delicious.
Thanks, Jasmine. That looks amazing. Can I taste it a little bit?
You sure can.
Okay.
Plate up.
All right.
And as he's tasting, we want to give a special thank you again to our food partners.
Yes.
Truly Living Well, Center for Natural Urban Agriculture, and their Saturday markets.
Oh my God.
And delicious.
Yes, very.
Yes. As well as 7 on the Natural Foods Market.
Yeah.
Is where we got all these great items to make our greens, our holiday greens. You can't mess up the greens, right?
Right. And, like we talked about before, getting other people involved, getting other family members involved can help out to make this
each step of the way. Someone can cut the peppers, someone can cut the greens really small and fine.
Right.
Each step of the way, someone can make sure that the broth is thawed out, because again, we did a recipe in a different blog about building your own broth, right? So check that out if you haven't seen it already. And we use that broth in our greens.
Yeah, and it really tastes great. Well, thanks, Jasmine, and thanks for joining us for SCULPT. Stay tuned for more episodes. Glad to have you.